The setup: a veteran's fight against a suburban conspiracy. The morning sun hadn't even cleared the horizon when my world turned upside down. It was 6:42 a.m., and I was out on my front lawn in Willow Creek, a tidy little neighborhood in suburban Ohio, fixing a loose gutter in my sweatpants. My dog, Rusty, was sniffing around the yard, his tail wagging like a metronome. The sprinklers hissed softly, misting the air. Just another Tuesday, I thought. I couldn't have been more wrong. I'm Jack Sullivan, a 58-year-old Marine veteran who's seen 2 wars and come out the other side with a bad knee and a knack for spotting trouble. I've lived in Willow Creek for a decade, a place where folks mow their lawns with surgical precision and wave politely while secretly judging your mailbox. It's the kind of neighborhood where the Homeowners Association, HOA, rules with an iron fist, and I'd been a thorn in their side for months, filing complaints about everything from shady landscaping contracts to illegal fines. Apparently, that made me public enemy number 1. I was halfway up the ladder when a black SUV rolled up tinted windows. No plates, no logo. 3 men stepped out, all wearing matching navy polos, earpieces, and tactical boots that screamed surplus store. They carried clipboards like they were shields, but there wasn't a badge in sight. I clocked them instantly. Not cops, not security, just guys playing dress-up with a purpose. "Jack Sullivan?" the tallest one asked, his voice too smooth, like a car salesman reading from a script. His name tag said Davis, but it looked like it was printed on a home laser jet. "That's me," I said, stepping off the ladder, wiping my hands on my pants. "You lost, or just allergic to ID?" "We're with the Neighborhood Safety Council," Davis said, his eyes flicking to the others. "You're being placed under community sanction pending a security protocol review." I almost laughed. Neighborhood Safety Council? That was as real as a $3 bill. Before I could call their bluff, they moved too fast. Hands grabbed my shoulders, twisting my arm behind my back. Plastic zip ties bit into my wrists, tight enough to sting. My wife, Ellen, screamed from inside the house. Rusty barked, a high-pitched, frantic sound that made my chest tighten. "Jack!" Ellen's voice cut through the morning air as she ran to the door, her bathrobe flapping. "Stay back," I shouted, but the men didn't flinch. They shoved me toward the SUV, its trunk already open, revealing a steel mesh cage inside like something you'd use to transport a dangerous animal. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment stunt. They'd planned this, budgeted it, built it, all because I'd filed too many complaints. They didn't drive far, just circled the block once, slow enough for every neighbor to see. Mrs. Peterson, the nosy widow across the street, stood on her porch, arms crossed, smirking like she'd just won a bake-off. They took me to the Willow Creek Clubhouse, a place usually reserved for potlucks and yoga classes. Now it was a makeshift command center, filing cabinets, a grainy surveillance feed, and HOA guidelines taped to the wall like they were the Constitution. Margaret Hensley, the HOA president, was waiting, her visor perched like a crown, clipboard in hand. "Due to repeated complaints and behavior deemed hostile to community order," she said, her voice dripping with fake authority, "you're suspended from HOA meetings, voting rights, and block communications." "You kidnapped me," I said, staring her down. She smiled, thin and sharp. "You're free to go." They cut the zip ties, leaving my wrists red and raw. Ellen ran up, Rusty limping behind her, one paw wrapped in gauze. She threw her arms around me, trembling. "They ransacked the house," she whispered. "Said it was a safety sweep." "What did they take?" I asked, my blood turning cold. "Your service file," she said. "And the flash drive." That flash drive was a gold mine. 10 years of military records, deployment logs, commendations, and 2 audio files Margaret would kill to keep buried. I kept my face calm, but inside, I was raging. Rusty whimpered, his eyes locked on me. "What happened to him?" I asked. "They kicked over a drawer," Ellen said, her voice breaking. "He stepped on broken glass. That was it. They'd hurt my dog, the one soul in this neighborhood who didn't care about bylaws or who parked where. Rusty just wanted his family safe." I turned to Margaret. "You made a mistake." She didn't blink. "You made the mistake, Mr. Sullivan. 22 complaints in 1 quarter? That's not civic engagement. That's harassment." I stepped closer, ignoring the fake guard tensing beside her. "Paper trails lead places," I said. "You'll see. Follow them. Then," she said, spinning on her heel, "let's see where they go." I stood there, wrists burning, Rusty panting, Ellen shaking. This wasn't the end of their planet, was the beginning. They were building a narrative, painting me as the unhinged veteran, the guy who yelled too loud, the nut with a camera and too many opinions. Margaret didn't need proof, she needed doubt. And I'd given her an opening by fighting back, even just with words. That night, I sat in my garage, lights off, laptop open. I pulled every security file from the cloud, re-downloaded the flash drive backup, and dug out my old service photos, just in case they tried something uglier. I wasn't scared, I was calculating. Margaret wasn't playing HOA politics, she was playing war. And she'd just picked a fight with someone who never goes down without a swing. The next morning, a man in a security vest I'd never seen before knocked on my door, flashing a badge that looked like it came from a craft store. He wanted to survey my perimeter. I didn't answer. I watched him from the hallway camera, Rusty silent at my side, both of us knowing something was off. He left a yellow slip under the door. Homeowners Association Ordinance Violation, Section 14C. Failure to comply with Community Safety Review. I scanned it with a burner phone, not touching it with my hands. No match in any official HOA database. No record in the county municipal code. The return address led to a P.O. box under Brightway Solutions, a company I'd never heard of. Ellen walked in, holding 2 coffees and a look that said she'd seen our privacy shredded. More mail, she said, dropping an envelope on the table. Same P.O. box, different name. Inside, a glossy brochure. How to keep your community safe. It was all buzzwords: unified visual compliance, access discipline matrix, and 0 legal citations. This is a front, I muttered. Ellen didn't ask. She just squeezed my shoulder. How bad? Bad enough to make it look like we're the ones being watched. I didn't sleep that night. I pieced together every scrap. HOA emails, phone records, door cam stills. The man with the fake badge moved like someone with training military, maybe, but sloppy, like a hobbyist playing cop. I called my old buddy Mike, a guy who could spot a poser from 50 yards out. Remember Mosul? I said when he picked up. You said you could smell a fake a mile away. He laughed. Yeah, why? I need you to look at some footage. Mike showed up with protein bars, a 6-pack, and a grin, thinking this was a nostalgia trip. 5 minutes into the tape, he wasn't smiling. That guy's not security, he said. He's playing dress up. Keep watching. The footage showed a second man, no insignias, working in tandem like they'd done this before. They didn't hit other houses, just mine. Want me to tail them? Mike asked. Not yet, I said. First, we follow the paper trail. That trail led straight to Margaret. Brightway Solutions was a shell company registered in Nevada, no phone, no website, just a name on the incorporation papers. T. Randall. Tom, Margaret's husband. Ellen let out a low whistle. So the fake security works for her husband's ghost firm? Yep, I said. And they showed up right after I called out their noise ordinance scam. You think this is retaliation? No, I said, eyes narrowing. It's bait. I fired up an old laptop, air-gapped, no tracking. On a community forum nobody used anymore, HomeGuardWatch.com posted a single question. Is your HOA president's husband profiting from private security contracts? I hit post, closed the lid, and waited. 30 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Long, firm, deliberate. The camera showed 2 men, same ones as before, no badges, just earpieces and black jackets. Rusty stood between me and the door, silent. Ellen whispered, You expecting a package? No, I said, my hand resting on a folder in the console table. Inside, the real HOA bylaws, contract records, proof Margaret never filed re-election papers, and invoices from Tom's company. I didn't open the door. They left another yellow slip. Next step, mandatory compliance review. Ellen read it over my shoulder. They're bluffing, right? I didn't answer. This wasn't about a violation. It was about making an example. And Margaret was about to learn she'd picked the wrong guy to push. The air in Willow Creek felt heavier after that first ambush. It wasn't just the summer humidity. It was the weight of being watched, judged, and targeted. I'd spent years in war zones, scanning rooftops for snipers, but nothing quite prepares you for the feeling of your own neighborhood turning into a battlefield. Margaret Hensley, the HOA president, wasn't just flexing her power, she was building a case against me, and I could feel the noose tightening. By noon the day after the fake security visit, Ellen found the first flyer. It was tucked under a garden stone at the end of our driveway, like a cheap spy novel prop. My face stared back from the paper, grainy and distorted, probably pulled from a security camera I didn't know existed. Across the top, in bold red letters, potential danger to community safety. Below it, a blurry list of accusations: disruptive behavior, excessive complaints, threatening demeanor. It was me, Jack Sullivan, the Marine who'd helped neighbors clear storm debris, now reduced to a suburban wanted poster. Ellen held it up, her lips tight. They really went with this picture. You look like you're about to lecture a mailbox. I forced a smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. I blink too much, don't I? She wasn't wrong, but I wasn't laughing either. Flyers are easy to tear down, but suspicion lingers. I wondered if the neighbors believed the guy who'd lent them my pressure washer, the couple I'd helped dig out a tree stump. Were they nodding along, whispering in their group chats? Was I the villain now? Rusty growled low, his ears twitching toward the side gate. It was open. I hadn't left it that way. Did you open that? Ellen asked, already moving to close it. No, I said, my hand instinctively flipping the old challenge coin in my pocket, a scratched memento from a ranger buddy. Heads, I breathed. Tails, I plan. It landed tails. Then came the knock. 5 sharp raps, synchronized, like a SWAT team practicing for a raid. I stepped onto the porch, Rusty at my heels, and faced a man in a polo shirt, tactical sunglasses, and a laminated badge that looked like it was made in a high school art class. Behind him, for others, all stiff, like they'd watched too many cop shows. Morning, the leader said. We're conducting a safety audit due to concerns filed with the HOA. Safety audit? I asked, not budging. You got a warrant? We don't need one, he said, his voice clipped. This is private HOA property. This is my property, I shot back. Audit your sense of jurisdiction. Ellen appeared behind me, arms crossed. Show us the paperwork. The leader hesitated, his eyes flicking to the others. One tried to peer into the garage. Rusty growled again, deeper this time. Step back, I said, my voice calm but edged like a blade. You're trespassing, and that badge won't save you from what happens next. The shortest one piped up. We're just keeping the community safe, sir. People are concerned about your behavior. You mean my complaints? I asked. Like the one about Margaret funneling HOA funds to her brother's landscaping company? Or the fine she slapped on every house with a veteran's flag except hers? Silence. Their faces were blank, but I saw the leader's jaw twitch. I flipped the coin again. Heads. Good. I needed to stay sharp. Leave, I said. They didn't move. I opened the screen door and stepped out fully. You'll hear from my lawyer. And probably Detective Connolly. The leader puffed his chest. We're not done here. I know, I said, staring him down. You'll regret that. They left. No inspection, no citation, just the stiff walk of men who knew they'd been outplayed, but couldn't figure out how. Ellen was already filming on her phone. Rusty sat at my feet, tail still. It didn't feel like a win, though. It felt like the calm before a storm. That night, I sat in the basement, not to sulk, but to dig. I pulled out files I hadn't touched in years: military contract reviews, HOA bylaws, county audit logs. My security system had a little trick Margaret didn't know about, a parabolic mic I'd installed years ago for fun. It could pick up whispers from 50 feet if the wind was right. I scrubbed the audio from the fake security visit and caught a gem. He's the one sending the emails, right? The complaints, a voice whispered. Then another, unmistakable. Margaret, you let me handle Sullivan. He won't see what's coming. I smiled, spinning the coin between my fingers. Tails. She'd just overplayed her hand. The next morning, I called Detective Connolly, a guy I hadn't spoken to since a bar fight case a decade ago. Jack, did any of these guys flash a real badge? He asked after I played him the audio. Nope, I said, already pulling up my surveillance footage. What it showed was about to blow Margaret's little empire apart. I don't snoop for fun, but when you get fake raided in your bathrobe by HOA goons quoting bylaws like scripture, you start digging. I got my hands on the latest HOA newsletter, usually a snooze fest about hedge heights and parking rules. This time, buried in the back, was a security compliance notice with a logo I didn't recognize, PrimeGuard Solutions, LLC. It sounded like one of those firms that charge a fortune to tell you your grass is too long. But this one had clause. The invoice section listed a line item, Security patrol budget, $14,920. For what? Driving in circles and harassing me. Ellen leaned over my shoulder. Who are they paying for this? We've never seen a uniform until last week. That's what I'm finding out, I said. I ran PrimeGuard through every database I could access, local, federal, even LinkedIn. Nothing. No licensing, no board, just a flimsy registration filed through a sketchy legal service 6 weeks ago. Registered agent? Thomas Randall. Margaret's husband. If this were a carnival, I said, that'd be the reddest flag waving. Ellen whispered, this smells like fraud. Smells like something bigger, I said. I dialed Connolly again. He answered on the second ring. Jack, you always this busy? I think I found embezzlement wearing a name tag, I said. I sent him the files, scanned contracts, budget approvals, Margaret's digital signature on 3 expense reports funneling HOA funds to PrimeGuard for tactical initiatives. Connolly was quiet for a long time. This isn't just a security complaint. It's looking like municipal fraud. And that mailing address? It's Margaret's house. I leaned back. If she's siphoning public funds into her husband's business, that's conflict of interest, minimum. Could be mail fraud, Connolly said. Maybe racketeering if it's an organized scheme. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. Margaret running a RICO case? Stranger things had happened. Ellen brought me a mug of tea. What's the plan? We make her trip over her own ego, I said. Connolly agreed. Don't tip her off. Keep collecting. I'll escalate this quietly. That night, I started a binder 47 pages and counting. Receipts, ordinances, digital fingerprints of Margaret's scheme. I found a subcontractor ID badge in our bushes, labeled tactical. Facial recognition tied it to a guy on probation for insurance fraud in Nevada. So much for certified compliance. Rusty, lying under the table, open one lazy, I like he was saying, told you so. This isn't about lawn gnomes, I muttered. It's a criminal funnel dressed up as an HOA. Then someone broke into my garage. The handle was shredded, like they'd sent a message. I didn't scream. I rewound the footage. Black hoodie, work boots, gloves too thick for summer. At 3:27 a.m., he tried the side door. At 3:29, he was gone. But he looked straight at my sensor on the way out, dead calm, like he was daring me to catch him. I called Mike. You still got that trail cam from your hunting days? Something sneak into your tomatoes? He asked. Something worse, I said. I want it caught in 4K. At sundown, Ellen made cocoa like it was a normal night. Be smart, she whispered. Don't let them make you stupid. I nodded, kissed her forehead, and set the trap. I left the garage light on, door half raised, baiting them to think we were careless. At 2:48 a.m., the same guy returned with a buddy tactical gloves, bolt cutters. They didn't go for the garage. They hit the mailbox, fishing for an envelope I'd planted with fake HOA documents. They thought they were erasing evidence. They didn't know the real files were buried in my backyard, safe in a weatherproof case. By morning, the mailbox was empty. I smiled. The trap was set. The days after the garage break-in felt like walking through a minefield. Every creak of the house, every shadow on the lawn, set my nerves on edge. I'd seen this kind of quiet before, in dusty outposts where the silence wasn't peace, it was the enemy reloading. Willow Creek wasn't Afghanistan, but the stakes felt just as high. Margaret Hensley wasn't just a power-hungry HOA president. She was running a criminal operation, and I'd poked the bear one too many times. I stood in my kitchen at dawn, coffee cold in my hand, staring at the backyard where Rusty usually chased squirrels. He wasn't there. The space by the sliding door was empty, and that absence hit me like a punch. I found him by the fence, panting hard, eyes glazed, his water bowl tipped over. The smell was wrong sharp, like bleach mixed with something worse. I dropped to my knees, scraping them on the gravel. Rusty's gums were pale, his breathing shallow. Ellen, I shouted, my voice cracking. She ran out, phone already in hand. Emergency vet. Now. I didn't recognize my own voice. It was the drill sergeant from a past life, barking orders to keep panic at bay. We got Rusty into the truck, and I drove like I was dodging IEDs in Baghdad, every red light a personal insult. Rusty whimpered once, and I nearly broke the steering wheel. The vet took one look and said, possible toxin. He's critical. I stood at the counter, arms crossed, refusing to sit. Ellen tried to touch my arm, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, until they said Rusty would pull through barely. Outside the vet's office, I let it hit me. I'd buried friends in war, seen men torn apart by roadside bombs. But watching Rustamy loyal shadow, the mutt who'd trailed my convoy in Afghanistan for 3 days until I let him in lying there, poisoned, gutted something deep. He wasn't just a dog. He was family, and they'd come for him. I drove home, silent, a new kind of rage settling in. Margaret had crossed a line, and I was done playing nice. That night, I checked the backyard camera footage. There she washity, gloves, ball cap kneeling by Rusty's bowl, sliding something into it before slipping out the gate. She didn't even try to hide. It was her signature, written in cowardice. Call Mike, I told Ellen, dropping the remote. She nodded, no questions asked. By the time Mike pulled into the driveway, my kitchen table was a war room. HOA emails, bylaws, vendor invoices, maintenance reports. Whoa, Mike said, stepping inside. You building a lawsuit or a bomb? Both, I said, my voice flat. We're catching a ghost. I walked him through it. The shady property management firm Margaret contracted was linked to a shell corporation in Arizona, one that collapsed 2 years ago for wire fraud. Her name was on a vendor agreement, signed with her maiden name, funneling thousands in HOA fees for landscaping services that never happened. It's a pattern, I told Mike. Repeat fraud buried under HOA jargon. You reporting this? He asked. No, I said. We're baiting it. That night, I slid a sealed envelope into the mailbox. Fake account info, dummy paperwork, made to look like internal HOA documents. I propped the box open just enough to scream, careless. Then I waited. At dawn, I caught her on camera. Margaret, same hoodie, same gloves, glancing over her shoulder like a sitcom burglar. She fished out the envelope, tucked it under her coat, and walked off. What she didn't know, the ink was UV tagged, the gloves powder dusted, releasing trace particles under lab scan. A trick we used overseas to track leaks. She'd left a digital fingerprint, and I had it all on tape. I called Detective Connolly, meeting him at a diner on Route 12. His tie was loose, his coffee untouched. I laid out the footage, the forensics, the financial trail. He didn't blink. This could fall under RICO, he said finally. Organized theft, financial deception, mail fraud, attempted poisoning. That last one hits hard, I said, my chest tightening. With this, he tapped the folder. You've got motive, opportunity, and a pattern. But we need proof of intent. I stood, pulling on my coat. Then we dig deeper. Back home, Ellen was pacing. I told her about the trap, Connolly's interest, the risk. Next phase is dicey, I said. She'll retaliate. You think I'm going to sit in a coffee shop and wait? Ellen asked, her eyes fierce. I looked at her, really looked. No, you're going to help me finish this. That night, I stood by Rusty's crate, scratching his ears as he slept, for drip still in. His tail thumped weakly. She came for you, I whispered. Now I come for her. A neighbor tipped me off the next morning. Margaret was across the street, inside the Petersons' house with Tom, setting up something that didn't look like a defense. It looked like a trap. The quiet that followed was wrong, predatory, like the hush before an ambush. I stood in the hallway, barefoot, heart pounding. Rusty was at the front door, nose up, growling low. Ellen stepped in, robe tied tight, a baseball bat by the door. Why's the driveway empty? She whispered. Mike's truck is gone, I said. I'd parked it there to signal someone was home. Rusty barked, sharp and short. Gravel crunched outside. Then glass shattered in the kitchen. They're coming in, I said, moving low, back to the wall. Ellen handed me the bat, her eyes steady. Love isn't always flowers. Sometimes it's standing ready to fight beside your partner when the world flips upside down. I gripped the bat like a rifle, every shadow logged, every creak counted. Then I saw him, Tom, ski mask, black hoodie, glasses fogged like he'd run through a steam bath. In his hands, an industrial solvent sprayer, the kind that could strip paint or start a fire. Behind him, Margaret, no mask, just pearls and dead eyes, like she was on her way to a church social. I told you we should have burned the papers and left, she hissed at Tom. They're not even here, he muttered, twitchy. I stepped out, Rusty at my side. If you're going to torch my kitchen, at least compliment the backsplash. Tom yelped. Margaret spun, her eyes blazing, not with fear, but fury. I'm live streaming, she said, holding up her phone. For protection. You've got a history of aggression. And you've got a history of insanity. Ellen snapped from the stairs, her own phone recording. Smile for the cops. Margaret lit a Zippo, holding it over the sprayer. You want a show? Let's give them one. Put it down, I said, my voice low. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking fine, she spat. You filed complaints, embarrassed me, humiliated me on that stupid forum. You took my reputation. Tom mumbled. This isn't what we agreed to. Do it, Margaret snapped, slapping his arm. Rusty barked, loud and fierce. Then the front door exploded inward, flashlights, shouts. Police! Down! Hands visible. Margaret froze, the Zippo falling, bouncing harmlessly on the tile. She was tackled, handcuffed, screaming about entrapment. Tom sobbed. Connolly entered last, gun drawn, calm. You good, Jack? Not yet, I said, staring at the broken kitchen window. But we're close. 2 hours earlier, I'd texted Connolly a photo Margaret left in our mailbox, taken through the vet's window. I'd told him everything: the stalking, the false charges, the house being empty. Except it wasn't. It was armed, recorded, ready. I was done playing defense. The aftermath of the kitchen standoff left my house feeling like a crime scene, which, in a way, it was. Glass crunched underfoot, the air smelled faintly of solvent, and Rusty's crate sat in the corner, a reminder of how close we'd come to losing him. Ellen and I sat at the kitchen table at 3 a.m., the buzz of the refrigerator the only sound breaking the silence. In front of me was a manila folder, thick with evidence: HOA invoices, fake contracts, surveillance stills. It wasn't just about Margaret anymore. This was bigger, uglier, and it was about to get messy. I couldn't sleep after the raid. The insurance company was already dodging, calling the damage cause undetermined, as if someone accidentally sprayed lighter fluid in my kitchen. The HOA sent out a chirpy email about random vandalism, pretending our house hadn't nearly gone up in flames. The neighborhood moved on like nothing happened, but I knew better. Margaret wasn't just power tripping. She was running a racket, and I was the only one who hadn't backed down. While Ellen comforted Rusty, who refused to leave the singed hallway, I pulled every document from the basement safe: property maps, meeting minutes, contractor invoices from the HOA's so-called beautification fund. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but corruption has a smell, and I'd been trained to sniff it out. By morning, I called Detective Connolly. He showed up in a plain windbreaker, his eyes heavier than before, like he'd been up all night chasing the same ghosts. You weren't supposed to get this close, he muttered, flipping through my papers. Margaret's not smart enough to cover her tracks, but someone behind her is. You saying she's a front? I asked, leaning forward. I'm saying there's patterns. He slid a document across the table. Duplicate billing for a tree trimming job. 3 contractors, same day. 1 doesn't exist. He pointed again. HOA fees funneled to a shell company. Guess who owns it? Margaret, I said, not blinking. He nodded tightly. And the lease? Thomas Randall. Tom, her husband, the guy who couldn't hold a flashlight without shaking. He was no mastermind, but he was neck-deep in laundering money like a wannabe mobster. Connolly's voice dropped. This is bigger than HOA embezzlement, Jack. It fits a pattern we've been tracking across the region. Organized, sustained, and it checks every box for racketeering charges. Rico, I said, the word heavy. It wasn't just legal sight was a grenade. It meant Margaret wasn't a petty tyrant. She was the CEO of a suburban mafia. Wire fraud, mail fraud, falsified invoices, coercion, witness tampering. Connolly listed them like he was reading a menu. We've seen this in 3 other HOAs. You're the first who didn't roll over. I didn't feel proud. I felt the weight of it, the creeping realization that this fight wasn't just mine anymore. Before I could respond, Ellen walked in, holding an envelope with no stamp, no return address, just left on our porch. Inside was my military photo, the one from my deployment file, with a message scrawled in black marker: Soldier boy dies next. Rusty growled low behind her. Connolly snapped photos of the note. That's a threat. We accelerate. We? I asked. You're in it now, he said. We want Margaret and whoever's backing her, but we need her to act first. One more mistake. He handed me a burner phone. Record everything. Don't sleep in the same bed twice. Don't leave your car unlocked. If she escalates, call me. We're monitoring her calls. As he left, I noticed a dark SUV across the street, tinted windows, no plates. It hadn't been there yesterday. It didn't move for 3 hours. I didn't wave, just stared. Margaret was circling the wagons, but her empire was cracking, and she knew it. She was desperate, and desperate people do reckless things. The next night, the power cut out at 3:14 a.m. I'd been staring at the stove clock, waiting for sleep that wouldn't come. Ellen was upstairs, Rusty curled up on the kitchen floor, ears twitching. The blackout wasn't random, it was a signal. Rusty stood, growling low, his hackles up. Then the front door creaked, soft, like the house was giving up. "Jack!" Ellen called from the hallway, her voice steady but tight. "Stay back," I said, raising a hand in the dark. Rusty barked, sharp and loud. I grabbed the emergency flashlight, but it was too late. They were inside. 3 figures moved through the foyer, black masks, tinted goggles. One held a crowbar, another had zip ties dangling from his belt. The leader, Margaret, held a stun gun like a scepter, her grin twisted. "Don't move," she said. "It'll go easier." Ellen gasped. Rusty snarled, making the second guy flinch. Margaret pointed the stun gun at him. "Shock the dog if it gets closer." "You don't touch him," I said, stepping forward. "You're not in command, Jack," she sneered. They rushed us, fast and practiced. I grabbed a chair, but the crowbar guy cracked it out of my hand, pain shooting up my arm. Ellen was dragged back, her wrists zip-tied in seconds. Rusty lunged, teeth bared, and Margaret shocked him. His yell, scream, half-cry ripped through me. I charged, blind with rage, but they had numbers. They tackled me, zip-tied my wrists, and punched me in the gut. I went down hard. They dragged us to the dining room, duct-taping our ankles to chairs. They stripped the house phones, backup drive, my military gear locker. Margaret paced like she was hosting a dinner party. "You shouldn't have poked the bear, Jack." I spat blood on the floor. "You broke into a veteran's house. You think this ends with you walking out? You think I care about consequences?" she said, crouching beside me. "I built this community. I kept people like you in line. You think your complaints matter? That Connolly will save you? I am the system." Ellen locked eyes with me, her fury matching mine. "You're pathetic," she said, loud and clear. Margaret stood, her voice cold. "Symbolism, Ellen. This house, this rebellion, it needs to be purged." Tom held a can of lighter fluid, shaking, mumbling. "This isn't what we agreed to." "Do it," Margaret snapped. Rusty barked, twice, loud and proud. Then the front door shattered, flashlights, shouts. "FBI? Down." Hands visible. Margaret froze, the stun gun slipping. Tom dropped the lighter fluid. Agents flooded the room, tackling Margaret so hard her chair broke. Tom cried. The crowbar guy bolted, but didn't get far. Rusty bit his ankle before the cuffs went on. Connolly entered last, gun drawn, calm. "You good, Jack?" "I am now," I said, still zip-tied, bleeding but smiling. Rusty barked again, tail up. "We've got everything," Connolly said. "We've been watching them for weeks. Your tip about the vet photo sealed it." Margaret screamed about entrapment as they dragged her out. Tom sobbed, silent. I looked at Connolly. "This gets federal, right?" "Oh, it's federal," he said, showing me the warrant. "RICO. Fraud, racketeering, conspiracy." I exhaled. Precision, not rage, wins wars. And we were winning. The next morning, I sat in the wreckage of my dining room, Ellen beside me, Rusty at our feet. The feds had taken Margaret, Tom, and their goons, but I knew this wasn't over. There was something bigger in the HOA charter files, something I hadn't found yet. The real war was just starting. The sun rose over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across our battered lawn. The broken glass in the kitchen window glinted like shrapnel, a reminder of the war we'd just survived. Ellen brewed coffee, her hands steady despite the chaos of the night before. Rusty, still groggy from the stun gun but wagging his tail, claimed his spot by the sliding door. Me? I sat at the kitchen table, my binder of evidence open, pages dog-eared and coffee-stained. Margaret Hensley was in cuffs, but I knew better than to think the fight was over. She wasn't the mastermind, just the loudest cog in a machine that ran deeper than one suburban HOA. Detective Connolly had called at dawn, his voice clipped. "Jack, you're not done yet. We need you to testify. This isn't just Margaret. It's a network." He'd hinted at it before, patterns of fraud across multiple HOAs in the region, but now it was real. RICO charges don't just burn individuals. They torch entire systems. And I was the match. I spent the morning digging through the HOA charter files I'd pulled from the basement safe. Most were mundane rules about fence heights, paint colors, but buried in the fine print was a bombshell. A clause allowing the HOA to redirect excess funds to community enhancement projects without resident approval. No oversight, no vote. Just a blank check for Margaret and her cronies. I cross-referenced it with the invoices from PrimeGuard Solutions, the shell company run by her husband, Tom. Every payment matched a vague enhancement line item, totaling over $200,000 in 2 years. Landscaping that never happened, security patrols that only targeted me, and consulting fees to a company that didn't exist. Ellen read over my shoulder, her breath catching. "This isn't just theft, Jack. It's a heist." "And they almost got away with it," I said, my jaw tight. "Almost." I called Connolly, sending him the charter clause and a spreadsheet of the fraudulent payments. He didn't sugarcoat it. This is the kind of evidence that makes prosecutors salivate. But it's not enough to nail the top dogs. We need name someone higher than Margaret. "Who's higher than the HOA president?" I asked. "Follow the money," he said. "It doesn't stop at Tom's shell company." That afternoon, I drove to the county clerk's office, pulling every public record I could on PrimeGuard Solutions. The paper trail led to a holding company in Delaware, then another in Arizona, each one a layer of obfuscation. But one name popped up in the fine print. Richard Ellison, a real estate developer who'd bought half the lots in Willow Creek before it was built. He wasn't just a silent partner. He was the puppet master, funneling HOA dues into his own projects while Margaret played enforcer. I handed the files to Connolly at the precinct, his face grim. "Ellison's been on our radar for years," he said. "He's got HOAs in 3 counties doing the same thing, skimming dues, inflating contracts, intimidating residents. You've just connected the dots." "So what's next?" I asked. "We build the case," he said. "But you and Ellen need to lay low. Ellison's got money, lawyers, and a long reach. The feds relocated us that week temporary protective custody in a rental house on the edge of town. Old bones, good bones, Ellen called it. She turned it into a home in days, hanging curtains and planting herbs on the windowsill. Rusty found a sunny spot in the living room and claimed it like a king. But I still had nightmares: Margaret's voice, the pop of the stun gun, Ellen's wrist zip-tied. I woke up sweating, checking the locks, flipping my challenge coin. Heads. Brief. 2 weeks later, Connolly showed up, not in uniform, just jeans and a windbreaker. He handed me a folder from the Department of Justice. Inside was the full scope of Margaret's operation. Fake security contracts, embezzled HOA funds, hush money to silence other residents, even kickbacks on renovation permits with forged signatures. Ellen read it first, her face pale. She kissed my forehead and whispered, "You were right." Those words broke me more than I expected. Being right didn't feel like winning when it cost us our home, our peace, almost our dog. But it mattered. Connolly stayed for coffee, petting Rusty and joking about early retirement. "You'll get a subpoena to testify," he said. "Not just against Margaret, against the board." She was the tip of the pyramid. The HOA was collapsing. 5 board members were under investigation. 2 had fled. One tried to sue Connolly personally, but it didn't stick. RICO cases don't play favorites, they burn everything. Margaret was denied bail, labeled a flight risk. Tom made a statement, claiming he was manipulated. The court didn't buy it. He was complicit, and the evidence was ironclad. Ellen started a garden, saying she needed to grow something after all the destruction. I started writing a memoir, maybe a warning. Every day, walking Rusty past neighbors who now smiled instead of hiding, I remembered what we'd fought through. The blood test from the vet confirmed it. Rat poison, same batch Margaret used in her backyard. She'd tried to kill my dog, my family, my name. But we didn't just survive, we dismantled her empire. The trial came 6 months later. I took the stand, my binder of evidence now a federal exhibit. Margaret sat in the courtroom, her pearls gone, her visor replaced by a jumpsuit. She stared at me, not with fury, but with something hollow, like she'd realized the game was over. Ellison was there too, his tailored suit doing nothing to hide the sweat on his brow. The prosecution laid out the case, a multi-state racket using HOAs to launder money, intimidate residents, and fund Ellison's real estate empire. My testimony, backed by footage, financial records, and that UV-tagged envelope, tied it all together. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Margaret was convicted on 9 counts: racketeering, fraud, conspiracy, assault, and attempted arson. Ellison got hit harder, 15 counts, including money laundering and wire fraud. Tom took a plea deal, testifying against them for a reduced sentence. The courtroom was silent when the verdicts came down, except for Margaret's single, choked sob. I didn't smile. I just nodded to Ellen, who sat in the back, Rusty's leash in her hand. We moved back to Willow Creek after the trial. Our house repaired, the HOA dissolved. A new board was elected, transparent and resident-led. Neighbors apologized, some sheepishly, others with genuine regret. Mrs. Peterson even brought over a casserole, though I didn't eat it. Trust takes time. I still walk Rusty every morning, his limp gone, his tail high. Ellen's garden blooms with roses and basil, a quiet rebellion against the chaos we endured. I finished my memoir, titled The Cost of Quiet, a nod to the silence we broke. It's not a bestseller, but it's honest. And that's enough. Justice didn't come like a movie explosion. It came like order restored, piece by piece. Margaret's empire fell, not because I was louder, but because I was relentless. Precision, not rage, wins wars. And we won. But as I sit on my porch, coffee in hand, Rusty at my feet, I can't help but wonder, how many other neighborhoods are hiding their own Margarets? How many HOAs are fronts for something darker? The fight cost users safety, our trust, but it gave us something too. A reminder that no one's untouchable, not when you've got evidence, grit, and a dog who'll bite back. Thank you for following Jack and Ellen's fight against a corrupt HOA. This story isn't just about one neighborhood, it's about power, justice, and standing up to bullies who hide behind rules. Have you ever faced injustice in your community? How far would you go to protect your family, your home, or your truth? What does this story make you think about violence, retaliation, or the systems we take for granted? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective, whether you agree with Jack's methods or think he went too far. Let's start a conversation about fighting back when the odds are stacked against you.